If you like what you hear tonight, please let me know. I'd love to give you the URL to my website. I've always got new stories up there and a schedule for upcoming gigs. I want to thank AIFF for inviting me, particularly April and Alberto. For now, though, I'd like to talk a little bit about the word generation. There's a lot going on in that word. It's not like toilet or bacon. Now, I like those words, and especially what they represent. But generation has a little something more, doesn't it? A little bit more depth. And there's other words in there, too. There's generate, ration, gene. Now, with that in mind, think about your family for a second. Your mom, your dad, your uncle. What have they generated? What have they given to you? What's your ration in this life? What's in your genes? For as long as I can remember, I've been in love with the story. What's the story? And that comes from my family. Now, a lot of people would say that my family were bullshit artists. And with my name, Brendyn Schneider, I mean, think about the initials. Because a story can get inside, right? Stay in there and germinate, help you grow, and have a real effect, especially when you're a little kid. I shared a room with my older brother when I was growing up. And it was in an addition that was built onto the back of our house. And I was never comfortable in the addition. I think in hindsight it was because I was that much further away from my parents. But let me tell you, it's a really, really bad thing when an older sibling knows what you're afraid of. One night, right before Ed and I were going to bed, Ed turns to me and says, "You know, this addition never should have been built." Well, why not? Because, see, Dad and Uncle Bob, they didn't pay attention to the deed. I paid attention to the deed. I know what's underground right now. Why? What's underground? Well, I'm not supposed to say anything. But right now, we're on top of an ancient Indian burial ground. No, come on, no we're not. Yeah, we are. And if you listen real close, you'll hear the anguished cries of pissed off Indians because we built an addition on top of their tomb. No, come on, that's not true. Yeah, it is. Tonight, listen for the cries. Listen for the cries. Cries. Mom! Dad! Eddie, for Christ's sake, what the hell are you doing staring the kid for? Hey, it's not my fault if you guys don't know your history. It's not history. Don't listen to him, Brendyn. Your brother's being a real jerk. Look, there can't be anything underneath us. The whole town was built on marshland. Marshland? You mean we're going to sink? No! Look, no marshland, no ghosts. You're fine. Now, if we were in the bowling alley that I used to bowl in growing up, then you'd have a problem. Here, you're fine. There, the ghost wouldn't leave you alone. Good night. The bowling alley. The bowling. My dad, when he was a teenager, he bowled in a haunted bowling alley. And those stories used to set my nerve on fire. But to hear him tell it, there we were, me and John, the guy that worked the front desk. We were watching a game on Alley 13. Of course, that's where the master bedroom once stood. You see, before they built the bowling alley, there was a giant mansion on the property. The Covert Mansion. Everybody knew about the Coverts, far and wide, all across the tri-state area. They were rich. The Costello brothers knew about the Coverts. Matter of fact, one night they came out from Brooklyn, ransacked the house, and killed both Coverts in cold blood while they were in bed. A bedroom that once stood where John and I now were, Alley 13. So we're watching this game, and John's end of the conversation drops. And I look over and I notice him staring at the ceiling, staring at the vent that was above us, and just beyond the grate, a woman's face locked in a frozen howl of absolute terror. No noise, no nothing. Just her hair, blown in the breeze from the vents. John and I back up, and we look at each other for 1 second, 2 seconds. What the hell did we just see, John? And we step back, look back up in the vent, and the face was gone. But neither one of us ever looked at that vent the same way again. Now, not all the stories were ghost stories. Some of this generation stuff was just out and out tall tales. Like the time I was in the dentist office, I was in the dentist office waiting room, and I was reading through a magazine, and I come across a picture of Mount Rushmore. I turned to my dad, and I say, "Hey, Dad, how'd they come up with Mount Rushmore? You mean the mountain with the presidents?" Yeah, the mountain with the presidents. It was a guy by the name of John Rushmore. Who? John Rushmore. It was just one guy. One guy. How'd he get out there? Well, John used to hitchhike. Yeah, he'd hitchhike. Crisscross America. Odd jobs here and there. But get around mainly by hitchhiking. Well, one day, John gets out of a taxi cab. He looks up at a mountain range and he gets inspired. And he says to himself, now, before I leave this spot, I'm going to dedicate that mountain to my 4 favorite people in history. The 4 presidents. The 4 presidents, because in hindsight, my dad couldn't remember the names on the spot. So, one guy, Dad, wow, I had no idea. I mean, how long did it take? I don't know, 6 weeks? That's it? That's it. Wow, John Rushmore. All right, Dad, all right. If it was just one guy, how did he shape the heads? He couldn't have just done it with his hands. Oh, no. John always carried a piece of sandpaper and a hammer and chisel in his back pocket. Hammer and chisel. Tools. Tools played a huge role in the stories that I used to hear growing up. And my grandfather was the same way. My grandfather was a signalman on the USS Yosemite. This is a destroyer in World War II. He was one of these guys you'd see, and you remember the old film reels where you'd see people tapping out the lights with the flags or tapping out Morse code on the telegraph key? Now, after the war, he went to work for the New York Telephone Company as an installer. Late one night, he's working in a building, and he gets bored of installing it. It was just pretty monotonous work, as he used to say. And he grabs a flashlight, and he rewires it so that it only turns on when you press the button. And he aims it out the window, and he aims it about a block away to where the USS Intrepid was anchored. This was an aircraft carrier that was also in World War II. So he starts signaling to the boat, right? And after a few minutes, he starts to get signals back, and they ask him who he is. So he returns with his rank and his serial number. My grandfather said that the light instantly got more polite because he outranked whoever he was talking to. And they went on this way for about 5 minutes. So think about that for a second. A whole story, not with words, not with inflection or gesture, but light. I love that. I love that. And the crew was so impressed with my grandfather, this installer in this building a block away, that through the light, they invited him and my grandmother to have lunch with the captain on board the boat the next day. And I used to request that story over and over and over again. I love how my grandfather pulled someone into his story. I try to do that too. That's my contribution for this generation of storytellers. Like a few years ago, we had a terrible, terrible winter in New England. God, it felt like we had a snowstorm like every week. And I'm looking out the window one day and I was overcome with the sensation of, I want to sled. Have you guys been sledding? You know, like last year we didn't get any snow, but like the year before that, this year, go. I have a funny feeling, given the summer that we had, we're going to get nailed this year. Go sledding. Because I don't care what you're stressed out about, whether it's your job or school or traffic, go sledding. because it is the best reconnect to being 8 years old again. So I was in front of the window and I wanted to go sledding. But I didn't know the places around Boston that I could go to, so I called my friend David. David is the kind of guy that just knows stuff. Hey David, if I want to build a house using just one screwdriver, what would I use? Oh, 5/8. Hey David, if I wanted to go sledding around Boston, where would I go? Oh, why don't you try the Arboretum? The Arboretum? Of course. I mean, think about it. It's wide open. It's got the hills. It's got the snow. There's no traffic. That's where we go. So I invited David to go with my wife and I the following day. And he said, tomorrow, no, I can't. Go and hang out with the little brothers. Now, the little brothers are an order of friars who live in Mission Hill. You may have seen them in Boston Common. They help out the homeless. They are a great, great organization. A really cool bunch of dudes. And David volunteers with them, so that's how Kelly and I met them. But that's when it hit me. Who wouldn't want to go sledding with a bunch of monks? Right? So David says, oh, I don't know, I'll ask them. Well, the following morning, I get a telephone call. Hello, Brendyn. This is Brother Anthony. I don't know if you're still planning on going sledding today, but I told the other brothers about it, and well, they're very excited. You're damn right we're going sledding, brother. So this was to be my grand return. We had the friend David, the wife Kelly, the hills, the snow, and a boatload of monks on sleds. Wait, sleds? We didn't have any sleds. You needed sleds if you wanted to be sledding with monks. The whole idea of going down hills in garbage bags with friars, it just didn't sound right. It sounded kind of dirty. Kelly and I must have hit about 10 stores that morning, up and down Harvard Avenue, before we finally found a few in a place called Irving's. Irving's is a turn-of-the-century toy store that sells cigarettes, tobacco, cigars, and some toys, and during the winter, sleds. 2 hours later, we're all at the top of the Arboretum, Peters Hill. 9 people looking at 2 sleds. It's cool though, it's alright, because David brought garbage bags, and as it turns out, friars don't care so much about going down hills in garbage bags. So that's the idea this year. I'm gonna go sledding. And maybe, with the child that my wife and I are now expecting, we'll have more sledding stories in a few years. And this generation of storytellers will continue hopping through time. But for now, we've got winter in just a few months, so who wants to go sledding? Huh? Yeah, all right. I'm going to bring the monks. That's okay. My name is Brendyn Schneider, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. This microphone is so heavy. It's like people use barbells to exercise. I feel like if I had